I want to ask you, because Priti Patel is suggesting that we have a Greek style of sort of these processing type centres type thing here. Do you feel that that is a realistic proposition?
Well, look, for 20 long years, I have been saying that the way that we should solve this, and the channel crossings are only the latest in a long series of abuses. The way we should stop this is indeed to have secure reception centres in which we house all new asylum seekers so that we know where they are, we can consider their claims quickly, we can carry out necessary tests to establish what nationality they are, because often they claim to be coming from somewhere where they're not. And then, if we decide to refuse them, we know where they are. They can't disappear into the underground economy, and we can return them.
I mean,
I've been saying that for 20 years. I don't know why it's taken Greece and it's not only myself. Oliver Letwin had a very similar policy, except he wanted offshore processing. This has been a policy for some time that has never, ever been implemented. Now, why doesn't Priti get on with it instead of talking about Greece, which, as you rightly say, hasn't been too brilliant?
She talks a good game, though, but sadly nothing much seems to be happening. Do you think that, because she's talking about the EU putting a temporary ban on freedom of movement, whether that will have some form of impact?
Look, this is our problem, not the EU's. And if we actually look at the question of free movement, the right of free movement in the EU refers to EU citizens being able to move between each other's countries and work and live in each other's countries. It doesn't refer to people coming in from outside the EU. They have to establish a claim to asylum or some other right to be there. I think that really that is a distraction. It's like trying to blame France. Well, France is not terribly, no, that's not true, but France is not as serious about this as it should be. But the problem is ours. They're landing on our shores, and we've got to devise the answer, not look to everybody else to find it for us.
It just seems almost a problem that we don't appear to be able to get a handle on. Now, Anne, I'm going to bring in Lembit, because Lembit is one of my panellists, and he's joining me as well. And he's got a question for you.
Good to see you.
Hi, Lembit.
And my parents came to the UK as refugees after World War II, and they were actually essentially held in a migrant centre. It was benign. They didn't feel offended by it. Why do we... This is just... I don't understand this. Why do you think that we now think this is some kind of a bad thing, when actually we did this right after World War II?
And as you will know, Lembit, not only after World War II, and by the way, I'm very glad that your parents got here and were safe, but not only after World War II, we had, and probably still have, immigrant reception centres up and down the country where we keep immigrants who've been refused asylum and whom we don't actually trust to leave. And the Red Cross, in my day certainly, the Red Cross regularly inspected those and found that they were, to use your words, perfectly benign. And there's no reason at all, any more than there is with our prisons, to suppose that if you have such centres, that they must necessarily be run in a brutal way. The opposite is true. Children get education. Wives get medicine. I don't quite understand what the resistance is about.
It doesn't make any sense at all, and it seems perfectly legitimate for us to house people there. But the question is, actually, if we do this, there has to be a limited period of time with which people can be in this centre, though, because it seems to me that people end up in these processing centres, what we have currently, for years.
Well, that depends on the next stage. I mean, you're quite right. You could just all be perfectly hopeless if people just stay there. But that depends on the next stage. And the next stage is you've processed somebody. If they're genuine, you've then got a real opportunity to give them a proper welcome package to Britain, because you know where they are, you know what's gone on, you know what they need. That's if they're genuine. If they are not genuine, and if we need to send them back, then this is where we need to be a lot firmer about what we do. The only place we can send them back to lawfully is their own country of origin. And you can easily find out somebody's country of origin by the language they speak, by their knowledge of the area they claim to have lived in. You can easily test that. I mean, what did the interrogators do during the Second World War to spies? You know, you can easily test whether somebody's come from where they say they've come. And that's what we've got to do. And then we are entitled to return a country's nationals to them. And unless there is genuine persecution there, which is a different matter altogether, but unless there is genuine persecution, that's what we should do. And it needs will. And yes, in the initial stages, it needs resources. But then as the deterrent message gets out, the need for those resources decreases. But initially, you need the resources. And initially, you need the will. There's no will there. Pretty talks and talks and talks and talks and does nothing.
There seems to be some sort of legal framework as well that allows people to repeatedly come back and forth through some legal process and eventually end up staying here. And that's a bit disconcerting as well. I'm going to bring in Leo, and Leo Kearse. He's got a question for you.
And do you think that Brexit has backfired slightly, given that Brexit was partly precipitated by a desire to control our borders, but now that Europe's got no incentive, we're not friends with Europe, we're not in the same club as Europe. France has got no incentive to stop migrants coming across the English Channel, and this is almost precipitated the current illegal immigration crisis. France is just letting them across. They're almost like Belarus to our Poland.
But we sent people to help
I'm
there
sorry.
as well.
First of all, this was going on long before Brexit. We had Sangat, if you remember, where we had hundreds and hundreds of immigrants who were in a safe country, France. They could have applied for asylum there. They instead spent all their time trying to get unlawfully into Britain through the tunnel and other methods. This was going on long before Brexit. What we have now got, which is what we wanted through Brexit, and we have got it, is the right to control entry by visa, the right to determine the terms of those visas, to say how long people can come here, what qualifications they must have, what benefits they are or are not entitled to. We can now do all of that. That is called controlling the borders. Our problem at the moment is with unlawful immigration, which recognises no borders, and we have to deal with it. And we won't deal with it unless Boris and Pretty find a bit of willpower.
Well, listen, Anne, thank you so much for joining us. That's Anne Widdecombe, former Conservative Minister. Thank you so much.